Morning. I'm Art Lewis. Nice to have you with us. Later on, after the 10 o'clock news, Glenn Steffens and Alex Mixter are going to be with us to talk about the Potter Street Station. At 11 o'clock, we will learn about getting your pools ready for the summer from Spartan Pools. But for this hour, we're going to talk about the environment and things surrounding it with a good friend. And the reason I really enjoy talking to him is he is proof of what I've said for many, many years. You don't have to totally agree with someone to be friends with them. You don't have to totally agree with someone to have a lively but respectful discussion about issues. And that's exactly what we do. And he is Peter Sinclair. Peter, good morning to you.
Thanks, Art. Really appreciate it. And we do have a good time, don't we?
We do. We talk about a lot of things. And truth be known, I've learned this over the years. People you disagree with, if you sit down and talk to them, you find out you have more agreement than disagreement in many areas. There's always maybe one or two things stand out there, and you say, no, I don't believe in that, and you believe in that. But, we have become so polarized in this society today, we've forgotten how to talk to each other.
It's a problem. It's toxic. We've got to do something about it.
Yep. I don't know the answer. I'm not smart enough. So anyway, but
well,
welcome.
This is part of the answer.
This is part of the answer.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Absolutely. So a couple of things to talk about, and I know you wanted to bring one of them up right away because we recently suffered some weather scenarios that we wouldn't normally see. Mainly that big one was the ice storm up north. So what's your reaction to it, and what do you think about it?
Well, if you look back over the last several years, in 2022, we had that highly unusual F2 tornado up in Gaylord, of all places.
Yeah.
In 23, we had we were choking on the foul air from wildfires all summer. From Canada, and I think that got a lot of people's attention. Last year, we had our first ever in Michigan declared tornado emergency, which I did not even know was a thing. It's apparently a thing. And then this year we have this ice storm, which is, by all accounts, beyond living memory in terms of its intensity. And so we're seeing, just a series of events that are unusual for Michigan. The ice storm was part of a much larger system that got stuck. And you may recall, if you were watching the news, that a lot of dozens of people were killed in flooding throughout the Midwest. And that those stuck systems, there is an increasing body of science that says that has something to do with the warming of the planet, in particular the changes in Arctic ice.
And we often hear terms like, it's a 100-year event or a 500-year event.
Sure.
And I can well remember the ice storm of 1976. We were living in Bridgeport, and that was as nasty a storm as I'd ever been in, and it had devastating effects. Ice storms in and of themselves are not unusual. It's
right.
The severity we're talking about, right?
Right, exactly. Nobody says that climate change caused this event or that event, but whatever weather events we get now are happening in an atmosphere that is warmer. And if you remember your chemistry, warmer air holds more water. And so there is more energy for storms. And we're starting to see when we have an extreme event, sometimes they can be more extreme than what we remember.
All right, so let me ask it this way. We've heard about climate change for a long time, decades and decades. I would have to think if we put the United States up against many of the other countries in the world, we would look pretty good for the way we have attempted to reduce pollution, to control what goes into the atmosphere. Why are we seeing these things today when we've done such a reasonable job of reducing our contribution, where other countries that are far worse off than we are don't seem to have it?
Well, the United States has done a pretty good job over the last 15 or 20 years in reducing our emissions of heat-trapping gases like carbon dioxide. we do remain the largest total emitter if we look back over 150 years or so. I mean, China is...
Well, from the Industrial Revolution.
Of course,
yeah.
of course. So we have this legacy of, we have led the world, and that's good. We've emitted a lot. But now China is leading in terms of emissions, from what I understand.
India can't be close.
And India's coming up, but the developing world, in general. So what we got to figure out is how we can continue to bring our emissions down, and then I would hope the United States could be a leader in kind of showing the way on that.
Well, yet it's been doing that for a long time. Wasn't it a leader in showing the way to start with? I mean, we seem to be ahead of everybody else in creating laws that reduce this and reduce that. And,
well, we're losing ground.
Eliminated, coal-fired plants by the dozens.
Sure. Well, coal-fired plants are simply not economical, and that's an important...
Well, economy is part of it, yeah.
Yeah, markets by far, especially in the last 10 years, are driving this because the clean energy is just full stop the cheapest way to put new electrons on the grid. So that is sort of self-driving at this point. But we're losing... the United States has done a really great job of inventing new technologies, but then we're allowing other countries to kind of take the lead in really manufacturing those new technologies. So solar energy would be a great example. Battery storage would be another.
Gee, and that may lead to what? A tariff conflict.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Funny thing about that.
Right. Well, so we've seen two different approaches to that problem of like onshoring manufacturing. So the previous administration was a lot of carrots, like in terms of subsidies and things of that nature, to bring that manufacturing back, which is working. Now the current administration is mostly stick, and
we'll have to wait and see.
We're wait and see, but there's some questions.
Corning just announced that instead of $900 million in Hemlock, they're going to invest $1.5 billion.
Oh, that's new.
Instead of 1,000 jobs, it's now up to 1,400 or 1,500 jobs. Hemlock Semiconductor is looking for a couple hundred people. SK Siltron, these are all high tech,
right,
and pay above average. Problem is, where are we going to find the people, and where are we going to house them when we find them?
Well, okay, those are problems we like to have.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting they're not. Yep.
Let's. The Hemlock Semiconductor is just a great story. They make the stuff, polycrystalline silicon, that goes not just into our computers and cell phones, but also into solar panels.
Yeah.
And now they're going to be fabricating at least components for solar panels right next door in a large facility.
Which is why they settled there, because supplies right across the street, so to speak.
Right.
All right, we got to take a break. We're talking to Peter Sinclair. We will have more of our conversation when we return. At Dow Credit Union, the members are also owners who share in their success. Last year, they returned over $18 million to their members, reinforcing their commitment to their members' financial well-being. Join today at dowcreditunion.org/join.
Covenant Healthcare helps.
We're back with you here on WSGW. We're talking to Peter Sinclair, an environmental activist, consultant, and all-around good guy who I enjoy talking to. Peter, let's look at some what-ifs just for the fun of it, all right? There's a push now, particularly from this administration, to, if the word force comes to mind, but to entice business back to the U.S., to build cars here, to build just to manufacture. It's often been said you can't just have a service society; you have to have a manufacturing society. Is the technology there so that if let me stop for a minute, because my image, growing up in New York City and as old as I am, my image of industry in this country was the old brick manufacturing facilities that are now abandoned on the East Coast. And
sure.
If you take Amtrak up the east, you pass all of these empty industrial facilities, and they're big smokestacks.
Mm.
Is the technology there today to reintroduce significant manufacturing without impacting the environment?
Well, there's certainly new technologies, for instance, for things like steel. Those smokestacks that you recall seeing, a lot of them had to do with steel. We still make some steel here in America, but some of the new processes allow for what they call carbon-free steel. They use, I'm not an engineer, but they use hydrogen as part of the process instead of the coal, the coking stuff. And so that makes it a lot cleaner. So that would be an example. Manufacturing batteries for EVs is a huge industry that we should probably be part of. And what's cool about that is you're replacing a lot of oil and fossil fuels that require extraction and mining. That's pretty dirty. And eventually we get to a point with batteries where all of those components can be recycled.
Where do we get the lithium, the cobalt? Don't we have to do the same thing to get that material?
Well, fascinating because, a lot of people have talked about the cobalt that goes into batteries. Many people don't realize that one of the biggest uses for cobalt over many decades has been in refining gasoline. It's part of the fossil fuel industry's, I would say, disinformation campaign that suddenly we're all concerned about cobalt because of the way that it's sourced in particularly the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some human rights abuses there. Fortunately, the battery industry in the last 5 years has shifted radically away from the so-called NMC batteries that had cobalt in them to what's called lithium iron phosphate batteries, which are now the majority and kind of the standard, and use no cobalt. So that's an example, and no nickel, by the way. So those are two problematic minerals that have been, sort of left out of the system now.
Yeah, Ford just announced new battery technology that doesn't use any of that stuff either.
Right. So and
we know that that's being developed. We know because, first of all, realistically, I know you drive a Prius, which is fine.
Yeah.
But for a lot of folks who are thinking about EVs, there's something called range anxiety.
I get it. My wife has it.
So do I. And if they tell me I can get an EV with reasonable battery prices and range of 400 miles,
sure.
Okay, I'm going to look now. I want to look. Tell me I'm going to get 260 miles, but that's without turning on the heater or the air conditioner or the radio or the lights or anything else. I'm not so interested. But the day is coming, and I can sense this, that the day is coming when the battery technology is going to be there, that EVs will make sense. I don't think they're there yet. And if I had to go out today and buy a vehicle, it would probably be a hybrid.
If you can get one.
That's the other side of the coin.
You'd think that, I won't mention any names, but I've been to some dealers looking specifically for a plug-in hybrid, and they said, well, you can get those in California and New York, but you can't get them here.
They send them where the demand is.
Yeah, right.
That's basically what happens.
Right.
Yet, one of the major police departments around here went to Ford Explorer hybrids for all their vehicles.
Well, okay, but and you make a good point that batteries are following the path in terms of affordability and performance that solar energy has over the last 15 years.
Well, that the gasoline automobile did at the turn of the century, and the 1900s.
Right. We are still very much at the Model T stage,
exactly,
in terms of EVs, but the curve of technical innovation is much faster today, I would argue, than it was 100 years ago. And so right now you've got a whole lot of people who say, look, 90% of my trips that I make are 30 miles or less. So I'm great with not paying for gas, and and I've got my other car, which is a gas car, and if I need to take a long trip, I'll jump into that one. So that's one way to look at it. Another way is to just say, wait, maybe I'm saying a year, 18 months, and we're going to see a wave of new vehicles that are going to have the kind of performance you're talking about and be affordable.
That's the other key. You got to come down in price. I drove for a little over a week. I had 2 EVs, one for 4 days and another for 4.5 days. I never charged them because I just used them around town.
Sure.
And I was fine. They were great cars.
Yep.
I really enjoyed them.
Yep.
But I wasn't ready to go to Detroit in one of them. I could probably get there, but I'd have to find some place to charge to come back.
Yeah. I was fortunate to drive a Ford Lightning not
truck,
long ago.
Sure, pickup truck.
Oh, man. Wow. I mean, they hit a home run with that one, but some people still have questions about the battery. And my question about it is, I think they took the wrong path by building the most expensive vehicles first, where I think maybe they should have worked on the lower end of the market. And
I think going in, one of the reasons that happened was the price of the components they had to put in those vehicles.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was it's still up to us, the public, to create the demand.
Sure.
Sure. Whether it's a $20,000 vehicle or a $100,000 vehicle, the demand has to be there.
Yeah, I think what we can say is that, this EV transition is kind of inevitable. The amount of money that I think GM, I read, has invested $35 billion with a B into this technology. So they're not turning back.
No, they slowed down though.
They may have slowed down.
Ford did the same thing.
Sure, but they're not turning around, and they recognize that if they want to stay competitive, because China is now the market leader.
Oh yeah, BYD's
BYD and a few others. They have at least dozens, if not hundreds, of car companies in China that are producing, by all accounts, very competitive products.
Yep. Just not here because they can't sell them here.
They can't sell them here, right?
Anyway, we'll take a break, come back with talking to Peter Sinclair. We'll have more when we return on the Art Lewis Show.
Looking to build your dream home?
We're back with you here on WSGW, the Art Lewis Show, talking to Peter Sinclair. Peter, and I think we talked about this the last time, but it's a subject that really interests me. Your family name, the Sinclair family, and your lovely mother Mary, were long associated with the Midland nuclear project at the time because she was warning of some issues at the plant, and turned out she was more than right. But here we are today, generations down the road, and we have new modular nuclear reactors coming online. What do you think about nuclear energy and its place in our future?
Well, like we've been saying, technology improves, and engineers are really good at what they do. And, we're told that this new generation of nuclear plants is going to be a factor, but not right away. We're looking at 7 to 10 years before it can have even any kind of.
But you got to start someplace.
Yeah. And they are starting.
Yeah.
But here's the fascinating thing: is that there was an event called CERAWeek in Houston a few weeks ago, which is sort of like Lollapalooza for energy magnates and tycoons. And the story that was coming out of that, because I was following it in the business press, is that the people who build gas plants and nuclear plants, things like that, are saying the nuclear plants are 7 to 10 years out. Can't do much about that. The gas plants are, because of the supply chains, the turbines are completely locked up through the next 5 or 6 years. So, and yet we have this demand coming, we are told, from data centers and AI and EVs, which may be a big deal. So we've got to get new electrons on the grid as quickly as possible. And they're saying the way to do that is solar, wind, and batteries, because they go up really fast, they're cheap, and they work. And so it's really kind of an interesting situation to be in this moment now, where really the most practical thing to do. This isn't just sort of like, oh, gee, I'm a tree hugger and I wish we could have some solar panels. It's sort of like, if we want to keep the lights on at a price that we can afford, this is kind of what we got to do, and we got to accelerate.
Just out of curiosity, if your mom were here today and hearing about these modular nuclear plants, was she against nuclear generation, or was she against the way that plant was being built?
Well, I think she was raising questions that were generic to the whole industry, and that other people started to see after things like 3 Mile Island and Fukushima. We knew that there were problems with some of the basic designs, and I think it's actually a great tragedy that the industry couldn't have taken about a 5-year breather and just worked on some of those issues, like what do we do with the waste and some of the safety.
Well, and how do you mitigate the cost, because they were out of sight?
Well, but that's in part, like, for instance, when 3 Mile Island happened, suddenly we realized, oh, crap, this design is vulnerable, and so the Midland plant and dozens of other plants had to be completely rewired, which blasted the costs right out of sight.
Yeah.
That was the thing. We got over our skis. And
well, they also had so many redos out there that every time they turned around, they were taking out what they just put in because of shoddy work.
They had a problem with contractors, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, I really think, as I looked at it back then, I really think that's what cost them that facility.
And it gave nuclear kind of a bad name.
It gave it a bad
generally.
Name. But it wasn't the nuclear; it was what was going into it and how it was going in that was the bad part of it.
Well, so the idea behind the small modular reactors is that you build a lot of these things, and maybe you have sort of an assembly line where you got a line of them, just like 747s, and you just
turn them on as you need them.
Well, you build them in such a way that you start to get economies of scale,
right,
just by the number that you're churning out. Now, that's a tall order, because those the first 5 or 10 or 20 are going to be more expensive, necessity, Then you start getting into the economies of scale, you hope, but so you're going to need help for those first few, and that's going to come from the government.
All right, take a break, come back. We're talking to Peter Sinclair.
I'm attorney Jerry Reif, and I have practiced elder law, estate planning, asset and
right, we're back with you. We're talking to Peter Sinclair. So as we sit here today, Peter, if you look in the Sinclair crystal ball 5 or 10 years down the road, what do you expect to see environmentally?
Well, I expect that markets are going to continue to push the adoption of clean energy. Last year, 90+% of all the new energy projects permitted were solar, wind, and batteries. And it's been that way for a few years now. And so there's no reason to believe that that's going to slow down because of I've become a big believer in market forces, and nobody's repealed those laws so far as I know. So the current administration, says a lot of things about coal and stuff like that, but they did the last time too, and coal has just been sputtering out ever since. So, it's
been sputtering out, but there's been a lot of restrictions put on it too.
Well, because you need them, because it kills people, and it pollutes. The reason we can't eat our fish is in large part is because of the mercury that comes from coal, and so we do want to back off on that, and so no utility is going to build any new coal plants.
Not in this country.
No, not in this country. And so I expect that we're going to see continued progress along this, maybe not as quickly as it would have been, but, progress nonetheless.
And the eventuality of countries like China and India coming on board and actually doing something about it?
Well, China is most definitely doing something about it. I mean, China, I think last year...
Well, they just about choked themselves to death. They had to.
Well, they had to, but they put up more solar last year than the United States, Europe, and India combined. So they are moving rapidly along this path. And yeah, they have a lot of coal plants, but many of those coal plants are not running full time. So they're very inefficient, and they're not gonna pay for themselves. I mean, they have a coal lobby in China, just like we've got a coal lobby here. And so it's a bit of a power struggle, but again, markets are what they are, and they operate even in China.
Markets are what they are, but governments can push markets in a direction.
Sure.
And we've seen that.
Well, right, and if you look at the progress that we've seen technologically in the United States, I mean, think of the internet. That started out as a research project in a government lab, advanced research defense projects. And it was 30 years in the making before it actually started to have a practical application that you and I could understand. But had the government not done that, we would not have, for better or worse, the communications and the internet that we have today. So government has a role. And we just have to be judicious in how we roll that out.
It's an interesting comment, because in this country, we're a country of what I call the pendulum swing.
Yeah,
we live way out on this side of the pendulum, and when we figure out that's not right, we swing way out to the other side of the pendulum. Rarely do we get things to settle in the middle where we can sit down, talk to each other, come up with viable solutions.
Sure.
That satisfy most everybody. And it's been that way forever in this country, hasn't it? When you think about it.
I always think of that whenever anybody gets too euphoric about a situation or too catastrophic about a situation. I just try to remember, especially like to my kids, I will keep emphasizing that the pendulum swings. Just nothing is ever as good or as bad as you think.
It's it is so true. I mean, that is so true today. So if you could wave your magic wand
yes,
over the environment, what would be the first thing? Well, right now, what do you